This video contains flashing lights that may pose a health risk to viewers with photosensitive epilepsy. Viewer discretion is advised. The Phoenix has landed. The most entertaining shows of ineptitude are born through earnestness. I've seen the question brought up before, can you intentionally make a work of fiction that's so bad it's good? And my answer is, no, I don't think you can. The quality of being so bad it's good isn't something one sets out to earn. It's something that comes about because one is convinced through their self-proclaimed genius, actually society-proclaimed arrogance, that they're a skilled artist, perhaps even an auteur, that has something good on their hands. When what they actually have is something very silly. You can't intentionally make the next Monos or Troll 2 or The Wicker Man, or intentionally develop the next Action 52 or Superman 64 or Big Rigs Over the Road Racing. So bad it's good only happens because the people in charge aren't told, that's stupid, until after they've made fools of themselves. One cartoon I considered to explore this topic was Kif's Blooper Quest. For those unfamiliar with Kif, it's a furry show from DTVA about the titular Skirine and her leporine friend Barry, and the shenanigans they get up to in Tabletown, mountain town where they live. The oddball duo of Tischstadt, auf dem Berg. Ja, ich habe gerade ein Durchsprache Referenz auf meinem Komma gemacht, na und? Ach ja, spreche zufällig ein bisschen Deutsch. Doch, ich schweife ab. Blooper Quest focuses on Kif as she tries to make a movie, or specifically, bloopers. She wants to make bloopers, but she gets frustrated when everything goes right during filming, and the movie goes on to be a great success. And it's at the award show that she finally gets the bloopers she was after.
We tried to make a movie for the bloops, but everything went right and we swept the stablies. Swept the tablies, sorry.
As you can probably guess, the moral of the segment is basically that bloopers, mistakes in general, can only come naturally. You can't do things accidentally on purpose, unless you're a failed CBS sitcom. However, as much as Blooper Quest is one of my favorite segments of Kif, it didn't give me enough material to feel that it justified an entire review. So I settled on Plan B, a plan that I now realize should have been A. Why talk about the quality of being so bad it's good, when you can show it? Show don't tell, right? Anyways, I have the perfect cartoon to show, and it's one I've adored for many years, precisely for how baffling and inept it came out. Ladies, gentlemen, and all in between, I give you Curse of the Lion Men. This is the 7th episode of the 2nd season of the 1990s Mega Man cartoon, created by Joe Ruby and Ken Spears. Yes, that Joe Ruby and Ken Spears. And of course is based on Capcom's video game series about the titular blue robot, that has spawned several spin-off series including most notably X and Battle Network. For those of you that even after nearly 40 years are unfamiliar with the Mega Man games, let me give you a rundown of what they're like. Well, the classic games anyway, since that's what's relevant here. The Mega Man games are platformer shooters, and they have two big gimmicks that, for 1987, were quite groundbreaking. One is the non-linear gameplay. There's no Stage 1 and Stage 2 and so forth. At least until about their halfway point when you have to go through the castle stages in the traditional linear order. You can play the stages associated with each of the game's robots, known as Robot Masters, in any order you like. And the other gimmick is that defeating each Robot Master adds their weapon to Mega's arsenal. This allows the various hordes of enemies and platforming challenges to be negotiated easier, and it also plays into a rock-paper-scissors mechanic with each boss, where each of them has a weakness to one of the weapons that drains their health faster than the others. Think of it like how type matchups work in Pokemon. As for the game's structure, they for the most part follow the same basic formula. Fight the Robot Masters in their stages for their weapons, then go through the castle stages and fight the larger bosses. At some point, usually on the last or next to last stage, are the Robot Master rematches. Then there's the big fight with Dr. Wily, oftentimes stretched out over 2 stages. Wily begs for forgiveness after his defeat, and then that's the game. It's a tried and true formula, and even with 11 mainline entries, it manages to stay entertaining, even with plot twists that can be seen coming from a mile away, and voice acting of quality so bad that Boki doesn't even cover it, let alone subpar.
Mega Man, today we finish this!
Hey, Zach! Why must I fight you? We are not enemies!
Shut up!
The voice acting is so bad that it carries over to the X series.
No, this isn't happening! There's no reason for me to go on. What? What am I fighting for?
And it's not the only Capcom franchise with awful voice acting either.
Here's a lockpick. It might be handy if you, the master of unlocking, take it with you.
I should have been the one to fill your dark soul with light!
Anyways, the Mega Man franchise proved popular enough in its day to receive an animated series that earned syndication for 27 episodes across 2 seasons from 1994 to 1996. One such episode being the subject of today's review, /riff/rant. It's a perfect episode to make my first negative review, and I take pride in showing its catastrophic flaws to the world. So let's dive feet first into this litter box and see how badly it wrecks things. This animation from the mid-1990s featuring lions begins with dramatic shots of a celestial body. Oh, how I wish I was talking about the thing that this episode totally wasn't inspired by. This episode was totally inspired by that thing, and you'll see soon it's more than inspiration. It outright rips it off. No, we actually begin with shots of a comet as it barrels through space and passes by Earth. While in the meantime, while these robots are out searching for, as the doctor tells us with the subtlety of a cannonball,
a secret cave to use for my tropical island experiments.
To be fair, Wily has never been a well-written villain. I mean, this is the guy who tried to pose as Mr. X in the 6th game. And I don't think that anyone of IQ above their shoe size bought that Cossack and Proto Man were the villains of the 4th and 5th games respectively. It shouldn't come as a surprise though, that this guy with the depth of a Hanna-Barbera villain is written about as well in this show from actual former Hanna-Barbera animators. Anyways, as you would probably expect, robot masters from the games appear in every episode of this show. The show was pitched back when MM5 was the most recent release, and we never see the robots from after that game during the show, despite 6 being out when the show premiered, and 7 coming out during its run. Maybe it's for the best in case of 6 though, considering the robot masters from that are, kinda racist. Cutman and Gutsman are the rain robots in this show, and appear in every episode as Wily's bumbling henchmen. You can probably guess what they're like. Gutsman is the big, dumb, muscular one, and Cutman is the eccentric Peter Lorre impersonator.
Gutsman, any sign of Mega Man?
Not yet.
If you're Gutsman, then who's that Gutsman? Surprise!
And if you've been in the Mega Man fandom long enough, you know they each have a meme associated with them that comes from the show. Cutman has Kung Fu Cutman! And Gutsman has the shot of his ass. Also appearing in this episode are Brightman from Mega Man 4 and Starman from Mega Man 5. My guess as to why these specific ones would be that this episode has a lot of flashing lights, and features a cosmic phenomenon. As for how game accurate they're depicted, more on that later. I'm sure you noticed by now another reason this is the most infamous episode of the show, the animation. Even for the mid-1990s, the show's animation was unimpressive. Par for the course considering this is Ruby Spears, but still. We've been treated to the likes of Animaniacs, Tiny Toon Adventures, and Batman the Animated Series by this point. At the same time though, we were also subjected to Hammerman and Little Shop earlier that decade. But if that's the best I can say about the animation, it's really not saying much. It's still a show from 1994 that's peddling production quality closer to 1984. Curse of the Lion Men, however, even for the show's usual quality, this is a f***ing nosedive. This is like Some Enchanted Evening to the rest of The Simpsons' first season. A cheap imitation of something that's already cheap. Just in this one scene of the robots walking through the cave, we see the boundaries of cell paint clearly visible, miscolored characters, and cheap, awkward-looking animation loops. And it doesn't stop here. This episode will continue to prove Edward Murphy Jr. correct, as almost everything that can go wrong with cell animation goes wrong in this episode. Off-model character designs, movements that look janky and unnatural, animations that feel like they have frames outright missing, animations that sometimes don't even play when they're supposed to, continuity errors with scenery, and one error I'm gonna refrain from talking about for now, because it's an error I don't even understand how something like it happens. But trust me, we'll get to it. The dust of the comet opens a door on a mountainside, because I guess comet dust can do that, and the robots decide to investigate what's inside.
What is this place?
Sure looks weird.
Yes, our lights of epilepsy are flared. Be prepared! Remember how I was saying this episode rips things off from The Lion King? You probably believe me, but this should remove any doubt. Look at this guy. Does he look like a certain other Leonine villain? Yeah, I thought so. Could this guy be any more of a ripoff? Well, how about the fact that he's named Tar? Yeah, that's right, Tar. Apparently one removed letter in a Visionaire cipher set to the sound that a sheep makes is enough to avoid a lawsuit.
The curse is lifted at last, and now we can fulfill our mission to rule the world by turning all humans into lion creatures.
And he's also as blunt as Wily when it comes to being a villain. Subtlety? What's that? Also, lion creatures? Really? Not lions or lion men or even... Well, okay, only I say leonines. But come on. Lion creatures? That just sounds clunky. Hey look, I'm a rabbit creature! And Sonic is a hedgehog creature! And Bubsy's a bobcat creature! And the oddball Tetrad are a raccoon creature, a squirrel creature, a skunk creature, and another rabbit creature! And oh, hi Tetrad, I didn't realize you were here. Oh shit. Ah, April! The robots run off to alert Lily and we transition to the next morning, as Mega Man, his sister Roll, his dog Rush, and Dr. Light watch through the strobe lights as the news anchor becomes the first victim of Tar's army.
No! Sizzling circuits!
Yes, sizzling circuits. That is what the show's writers thought up for Mega's catchphrase. It's corny, I'll admit it, but it's the charming kind of corny, and any Mega Man fan who claims you don't picture his game counterpart actually saying it is lying. We've all done the pause trick, we all jumped through the boss doors, and we all headcanon Mega as saying sizzling circuits. Meanwhile, Tar and the other Leonines show up at the beach to carry out their plan further.
Check out the reverse spin, dude. Whoa! Is this Halloween or what?
No, Surfer Dude with the most nonchalant reaction to getting hit in the head I've ever seen. You cannot tell from what appears to be hundreds of feet away that those are Leonines. Not when the average human being can only recognize faces at about 50 feet away. Can you tell which of these images is of Benedict Cumberbatch and which one is of Cillian Murphy? Yeah, that's right, you can. Also, they're both Willem Dafoe. Also, you're probably wondering, is this all Tar's plan for world domination is? Just turning people into Leonines? The answer is yes it is. Tar does at one point use Wily's mind control device on the robots, and the episode does, sort of, maybe, try to depict the humans turned Leonines as being made subservient to Tar and lose the ability of human speech. But it just as often shows them just going about their lives as Leonines, and also some of the Leonines do still talk. So basically, Tar and his army's plan amounts to turning the world into normal life but lion guys. AKA what Sabersport probably wishes the world was.
Nobody can stop us. Guess again, lion breath.
And yes, I heard you from hundreds of feet away!
You've got me to deal with! These guys aren't so tough.
You say as you fail to hit a single one of Tar's dozen-strong army? Dr. Wily and his robots show up intent on allying with Tar's army to take down Mega, which presents me with an opportunity to talk about how well this episode, and the show as a whole, depicts the Robot Masters. It's a mixed bag. The show is more accurate with what the Robot Masters look like than with their weapons, most of the time. It does occasionally take liberties, some that you may not notice unless you're really looking, others more noticeable and baffling, such as giving Metal Man goofy looking orange eyes, and making Airman look like Patrick Warburton cosplaying as a bootleg Pokemon. As for this episode, Starman is pretty dead on, while Brightman now has solar panels on his body, which is a change I don't mind. However, the depictions of the weapons are less accurate. For one, Meg is supposed to change color depending on what weapon he has equipped, and 1.5, Cutman doesn't fire rolling cutters from an arm cannon, let alone the side of an arm cannon. His rolling cutter are the shears atop his head. They function like a boomerang. But point number 2, the least accurate the show gets with the weapons are with the force field type weapons. At this point in the show, we've seen Woodman's leaf shield depicted as a leaf-shaped shield, and in this episode, the Star Crash is now star-shaped projectiles fired out of an arm cannon. I think it should go without saying that I prefer their original incarnations. But on the bright side, this. The f*** even was that?
Twirling towards freedom.
Proto Man eventually subdues Mega Man and Rush by trapping them in a net. Oh, by the way, Proto Man's a villain in the show, even though the presence of robots from the 4th and 5th games leads me to believe that this show takes place after his time as an antagonist in the 3rd game. And Dr. Wily talks to Tar about forming an allyship to take over the world. And no, it's not a spoiler to say Tar betrays Wily, or even that a betrayal takes place. Betrayal would imply lying. Though he does let Wily and his robots come along, Tar also outright says that he will be the one ruling the world.
Take over the world! It is I who shall rule the planet!
Wily, Tar, and their respective goons bring Mega and Rush to a fish plant, where Gutsman puts them on a conveyor belt to get grinded to scrap metal.
So long, suckers!
Oh no, whatever will they do to escape the blades that they can easily avoid by just rolling off the belt? And apparently also clipping out of the net. A convoluted trick shot.
Thank you. Mega.
Oh yeah, Rush can talk like Scooby-Doo in this show. Because guess Ruby and Spears want to remind everyone of their most famous creation in anything they make. So Mega Man calls Dr. Light, who tells him he has found a way to reverse the curse. Okay, the characters seem to be finding easy ways out of things for the sake of plot convenience. But I'm sure whatever Light has up his sleeve doesn't break any other established rules of writing.
There. That should finish the anti-curse machine.
Finish the what?
That should finish the anti-curse machine.
Anti-curse... No, that's a cop-out. And also rant time. Despite how similar they are to each other as genres, blending together science fiction and fantasy can be done. In fact, it has been done before and to great effect, giving us some beloved pieces of media. Star Wars, Castle in the Sky, and Chrono Trigger, just to name a few. But genres have their rules and limitations, and while combining them does allow you to bend some of them, it also makes others more restrictive. And when it comes to combining science fiction and fantasy, this is the first thing you learn. Rule number 1. You cannot use science to undo magic, because then science gets too much of an upper hand. I mean, what if lightsabers in the Star Wars franchise could be disabled by blaster bullets? Then there'd not be a Jedi or a Sith, and thus no Star Wars. There'd be the misadventures of Jar Jar Binks. Now sure, you can have blaster bullets or other weapons of science kill or maim or incapacitate a magic user. In fact, that's another thing you learn early on when combining sci-fi and fantasy, to put science and magic on equal footing. But you can't have science be in control of magic itself. It's magic that has control over science, and magic that must defeat magic. How does a celebrity-driven cartoon know this and you don't? Anyways, Wily, Tar, and their goons capture Light and Roll and take them to the tomb, where they turn the doctors into leonines and the robots into their servants via the aforementioned mind control device. And... what the f*** happened to Roll? Most of the rest of the episode is essentially an action sequence. Again, with cheap looking animation even by this show's standards. So I'll just run it down real quick and highlight some hilariously glaring animation errors. The next scene takes place at a police station. Mega Man arrives as Tar's army turns the cops into leonines, only to be launched to the roof by Proto Man, where he falls through the glass ceiling. That turns into a concrete ceiling. And then back into a glass ceiling! What is this, one of those appearing blocks everyone just uses Rush? Or the magnet beam or the items to bypass the platforming challenge of? Speaking of which, the next scene has Mega using a helicopter to try to fight the robots. Not an animation error in and of itself, I just wanted to point out the redundancy of it given the rush shot we just saw him use a minute ago. But I will admit it's interesting seeing Dr. Light as a villain, and spouting the according dialogue.
With him gone, the island is ours.
Tar and his Leonine army gather in an office at a nondescript building with windows, where we see him go full Tusken Raider.
Today, Hawaii. Tomorrow, the mainland and the rest of the planet.
That might be the silliest looking animation loop I've ever seen. It's so silly it causes two of the other Leonine suits to glitch out. Mega can't even get into the office without the animation on him glitching either. He gets in by riding on the elevator and traveling through the vents, which I would call a doll store version of that scene in Toy Story 2, except that'd be an insult to dollar stores. And as he removes the cover on the vent, the parts of him not behind the vent just disappear. How does this even happen? He looks like he was sent to the Phantom Zone. But of course, you may remember me talking about one error a few minutes ago, that I don't know how it happens. Well, we've just reached the moment where it happens. Trust me, it's probably the most baffling error in this episode. And given all I've covered so far, that should be saying a lot. Anyways, after Wily complains about not being the one in charge of the plan for world domination, in possibly the worst attempt at blending animal noises with human speech I've ever seen.
Why can't I lead the invasion? Because I am in command! Never forget that!
Mega and Rush have their cover blown by a brainwashed Roll, and escape by jumping out the window. And then they turn transparent? This scene was drawn, inked, and painted. The cells were photographed onto the background, and the footage put together had to have been watched back by several people. Editors, producers, test audiences, the director, possibly even Ruby and Spears themselves. And none of them questioned why Mega and Rush were transparent?
Boy, I really hope somebody got fired for that blunder.
Now, I get it. Animation is a tedious process. I know from experience. Not so much as an animator, but an editor. That's why these videos take so long to make. And I know that everyone, including the animators, had to have been working under some stiff time constraints to get the episode, the entire season, to air on time. But characters being transparent. I struggle to figure out how that happens on accident, especially in 1995. In this day and age, it's as simple as a transparency slider. But this is cell animation. Transparency would have had to have been accomplished by taking one exposure of the background and then another exposure on the same frame of film of the background with the cells laid atop it. That for several frames. Or at least that's my understanding of it, correct me if I'm wrong. And they play this shot twice, by the way. Point I'm trying to make is, stuff like this is usually a choice. You don't just accidentally make assets transparent and let it slip by unless you don't watch back your footage. Editors aren't optional. Films and TV shows have them for a reason. And stuff like this is that reason. Anyways, after this baffling error, Rush's jet ability malfunctions. Yes, I am bringing this up because it's another example of this episode's bad writing. And Mega has to break his and Rush's fall with a fire hydrant. Later, the two track down Roll in an airport hangar, where Mega undoes Tar's programming.
What's going on?
Dr. Light reprogrammed you to follow Tar's commands.
No, Mega. That was Tar that did the reprogramming. We saw him do it. Roll made that weird dirt face after he did it, remember?
I think I can see a spider.
The heroes then head to the hotel to retrieve the anti-curse machine. I'm just gonna call it the machine from now on because of how dumb that sounds. With Cutman's rolling cutter damaging their car in just the right way to send them flying into the correct room. Which on top of being contrived like the rest of this episode, is also quite an egregious violation of the laws of physics and space. I mean, look how far away the closest building is. I don't even know how they land into a parking lot, let alone a building. Mega and Roll find the machine busted, and narrowly avoid two Leonines with the tackling ability of mannequins, only to be surrounded by Tar's army outside.
I think it's time you guys blow this place!
Remember when I said a minute ago Rush's malfunctioning was part of bad writing? Yep, he's over it now because the episode demands for him to be. And also somehow Mega knew he wasn't still malfunctioning. Anyways, the heroes take to the sky, where Mega fixes the machine and unleashes its epilepsy lights to defeat Tar's army, and turn the Leonines back into humans. Wily, however, is as accepting of defeat as Donald Trump.
Get me that contraption! Turn the humans back into lion creatures under my control.
Wily, the lion part isn't even necessary at this point. You can just try to invade the mainland. Unless you're a furry that I don't know about that insists on the humans being Leonines. Of course, Mega isn't having any of it, and busts the other robots into the pool. What, are they made out of helium balloons? Anyways, Wily and the robots run off, and the episode ends with Mega, Roll, and Light walking on the beach, spouting the epilogue through clunky exposition.
I took the mummies to the tomb and sealed it so nothing will open it again. Not even the Makahano comet when it returns in 1,000 years.
Again with the use in science to override the effects of magic?
You are made of stupid.
And that was Curse of the Lion Man. What an absolute mess of an episode. The story is a mess, the animation is a mess, the characterization is a mess, the action is a mess. Everything about this episode is a goddamn mess. And that's exactly why it is so entertaining to watch. It's such a spectacular train wreck of an episode that you just can't help but admire how gloriously it fails. This whole show was full of corny moments, as you'd probably expect from a Ruby Spears show. But this episode takes it to another level. And even with how awful it is on an objective level, I still recommend it. You may not enjoy its silliness as much as I do, but you'll at least have an idea of what we Mega Man fans hold up as golden turds that we turn to for memes. As for the show itself, you're more likely to enjoy it, and likely do already, if you're a fan of the games. And even then, writing like this franchise puts out stands out less in video games, where corny, dare I say lackluster story writing, is more excusable if the game itself is at least fun to play. And the games, at least the NEX Xology that I'm most familiar with, are indeed fun to play. Just about every aspect of them. The gameplay, the graphics, the soundtracks, the level of challenge. You can't get much better than them on Nintendo's iconic 3rd generation system. And while the show that they spawn isn't of the same quality, it, Curse of the Lion Men in particular, is of another league of quality. The league of being so bad that it loops back around and becomes enjoyable once again. And now it is time for the Phoenix to fly off. Until next time, take care, stay safe, be good to each other, keep AI in things like video games and not in the creative process, and have a good one. The video's over, Tetrad! You can stop making those faces!